2 little girls vanished without a trace on a quiet beach. 8 months later, Stallone flew over a remote island, and what he saw made his blood run cold. Stay with us until the end to hear what unfolded. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and tap the bell so you never miss interesting stories. The hum of the engines was soft, steady, 30,000 feet above the earth. Sylvester Stallone sat in the wide leather seat of his private jet, a cup of tea cooling on the tray beside him. Across from him, his wife leaned toward the window, her eyes fixed on the endless stretch of blue ocean below. "That island," she said, pointing to a shape just breaking the waves on the horizon. "It's beautiful. Let's stop there for an hour." Stallone turned to look. The island, though small, had a kind of untouched majesty. White beaches framing thick green jungle, a rocky edge that curved like the jawline of an old warrior. For a moment, even he was taken by the thought of stepping onto that shore. Before he could speak, their assistant, Mark, leaned in from across the aisle. "That's Middle Island," he said. "Private property. Been that way for decades. No public access. The owners are particular." His wife sighed, a little disappointed. "Of course it is." The jet circled gently to adjust its route. Stallone, still curious, picked up a pair of compact binoculars from the table beside him and peered down through the glass. The view sharpened, details clicking into place. A dock, a cluster of stone buildings, the hint of movement near the shoreline. He adjusted the focus again and paused. Near a grove of palm trees, 2 little girls stood beside 2 men. The men were not touching them, not roughly, but something was wrong. One of the girls shrank back as the taller man raised his hand. The other girl was being pulled by the wrist toward a pathway that led inland, away from the beach. Stallone couldn't hear anything from up here, but he didn't need sound. He had seen that look before, in movies, yes, but also in real life. It was fear. "Get me the telephoto," he said quietly. Mark opened the black case under the seat and handed over a heavy lens. Stallone attached it to his small camera, leaned closer to the window, and began snapping shots. He didn't speak again until the plane touched down 45 minutes later at a sleepy airstrip near a fishing town along the coast. As the crew refueled, his wife, eager to shop in the city, left Stallone behind, because she knowing well that he preferred not to be recognized. He wandered down the narrow street that hugged the shoreline, letting the sea breeze carry away the thoughts crowding his mind. It had been years since he felt that kind of pull, a moment that told you something wasn't right, even when everyone around you acted like everything was fine. Then he saw her, a woman, alone, carefully pressing posters onto a wooden board by the beachside cafe. Her hands trembled slightly as she smoothed the tape, a stack of papers clutched under one arm. The faces on the posters stopped him cold. 2 girls, one missing a tooth, one with dimples, the same girls. He stood still for a few seconds, letting the realization settle. She turned to reach for more tape and caught him staring. She looked tired, not just from lack of sleep, but from holding herself together. He stepped closer. "Excuse me," he said gently. "These girls, I just saw them, on Middle Island." She froze. The stack of posters slipped from her arms and hit the ground. Her breath caught. "What did you say?" "Middle Island," he repeated. "I was flying over it less than an hour ago. 2 girls. They looked just like them. I took pictures." She blinked fast, once, then again. Tears welled in her eyes, but she didn't cry. Not yet. Her voice was almost a whisper. "Are you sure?" "As sure as I can be from that distance," he said. But something felt wrong. One of the men, the way he grabbed her. She stared at him, and for a long moment, neither of them spoke. "I'm Catherine," she said finally. "They're my daughters, Casey and Chloe. They've been missing for 8 months. Stallone held out his hand. "Sylvester, I want to help." Together they turned toward the local police station. The car ride was quiet for a while. The only sound came from the tires rolling over the sun-warmed pavement and the gentle hum of the air conditioner working against the dry heat outside. Catherine sat in the passenger seat, hands folded tightly in her lap, as Stallone focused on the narrow road ahead. She spoke without turning her head. "It started 8 months ago," she said. "March, the day we scattered his ashes." Stallone glanced over. Her voice was steady, but there was weight in it. She didn't sound like someone telling a story. She sounded like someone still living in it. "My husband, David, died of cancer. It was fast. 6 months from diagnosis to..." She stopped, pressed her lips together, then continued. "He was only 41. A good man, funny. Never once raised his voice at the girls." "Emma and Chloe?" Stallone asked. Catherine nodded. 6 and 5 at the time. I thought, after the funeral, after everything, we needed a way to say goodbye properly. So I took them to this beach in Queensland, where David and I first met. We brought his ashes. Her eyes stayed on the window, watching the coastline drift by. It was a quiet morning, no crowds. The girls helped me pour the ashes into the waves. Emma said she saw Daddy in the clouds. Her mouth twitched, almost a smile, almost a sob. We sat there for a long time. Then they asked if they could build a sandcastle while I went to buy lemonade from a cafe just across the boardwalk. She turned to face him now. "I was gone 5 minutes, Mr. Stallone, maybe less. I could still hear them laughing when I stepped into the cafe." "And when you came back?" he asked gently. "They were gone." She didn't flinch, didn't raise her voice. The words came like they had been said hundreds of times before, rehearsed, filed in a police report, whispered in prayer. There was no scream, no struggle, just 2 little plastic shovels lying in the sand. Stallone kept his hands on the wheel. His jaw tightened. I ran. I asked everyone, a couple walking their dog, a man with a fishing rod, 2 teenagers with phones. No one saw anything. The beach camera had been out of order for days. By the time the police showed up, I'd already searched half the shoreline myself. What did they say? That maybe they wandered off, that maybe they'd turn up. One officer even suggested they were playing hide and seek. Catherine's laugh was bitter. Emma hated hide and seek. She said it made her nervous. "And the investigation?" Stallone asked. She shook her head slowly. "They tried at first, issued alerts, interviewed people. But after 2 weeks, when there were no sightings, no messages, no demands, they changed the language, started saying presumed lost, talked to me about grief counseling. And you?" I didn't accept that. I couldn't. She looked straight ahead again. "Children don't just vanish. Someone took them. Someone who knew what they were doing." There was silence in the car again, but it wasn't empty. It was heavy, filled with months of unanswered questions, sleepless nights, and quiet, private prayers. "I followed every lead myself," she said. "Queensland, then New South Wales, then Perth. I stayed in motels, slept in the car, put up posters until my fingers bled. I stopped being Catherine. I became the mother of 2 missing girls." She looked at him. "And then you came along." He didn't reply. He didn't need to. "That moment," she said, voice quieter now. "When you said you saw them, it was like someone cracked open the coffin I was being buried in. I'm scared to believe it, but I can't ignore it." "You don't have to ignore it," Stallone said. "You saw their faces on that island, and so did I." Catherine nodded. "Then we follow this, to the end." He turned into the driveway of the local police station. A low brick building, modest but solid, sat under the late afternoon sun. An old flag flapped slowly on a rusted pole out front. Catherine took a deep breath as the car stopped. "I've told this story 100 times, she said, "but this is the first time it feels like someone might finally listen." The police station was cooler than the outside air, but the welcome inside was anything but warm. A heavy-set officer behind the front desk looked up when Stallone and Catherine walked in. He recognized Stallone first, not as a man involved in a missing persons report, but as the movie star who'd once stared down villains on screen. There was a flicker of interest, maybe even respect, but it faded as soon as Catherine stepped forward with the flyer in her hand. "We believe my daughters may have been seen on Middle Island," she said. Her voice was calm, practiced. The officer didn't take the paper. "Middle Island's private property," he replied flatly. "Owned by Rick Harrison. There's nothing out there but his vacation house. Security's tight." Catherine didn't blink. "A man on a plane saw 2 girls matching their description. I need someone to go out there. Today." The officer scratched his cheek. "Ma'am, that island has been cleared before. No signs of anything suspicious." Stallone stepped forward, his tone level but unmistakably firm. "I saw them with my own eyes. 2 girls. One was being pulled by the arm. The other was crying. That's worth looking into." The room shifted slightly. A second officer entered from the back, leaner, younger, and a little more attentive. "We can speak with the chief," he said, glancing between the 2 visitors. "He'll want to hear this." Catherine and Stallone were shown to a side office, where a man in a dark shirt and loosened tie listened with a practiced stillness. Chief Barker. His hands stayed folded on the desk, his expression unreadable. "We've searched Middle Island twice," he said finally. "Last year and the year before. Nothing unusual. Mr. Harrison was cooperative both times." Catherine leaned forward. "Cooperative doesn't mean innocent. I know what I saw. More importantly, so does he." She gestured to Stallone. The chief turned to Stallone, eyebrows lifting slightly. "You're saying the girls you saw match the ones on this flyer?" "I don't guess," Stallone said quietly. "I know." That seemed to tip the balance. Barker nodded once, reluctantly. "All right, we'll send a team. Just a quick check and we'll document everything." Outside, Catherine stood on the porch steps of the station while Stallone lit a cigarette, more habit than need. The sea breeze had picked up, carrying the scent of salt and dry grass. "They don't believe us," she said. "They're humoring us," Stallone replied, "and hoping it blows over." It didn't take long for the small team to board a boat and head out. Catherine wasn't allowed to go with them. Stallone offered to charter a private vessel, but she shook her head. "If they're hiding something," she said, "they won't let us get close." They waited at the pier for over 3 hours. The sun fell lower, and the colors of the ocean shifted from silver to steel. When the officers returned, the chief met them on the dock with an easy smile, the kind of smile that's rehearsed. "No girls matching your daughters were found," he said. "Mr. Harrison was there. Said the children were his nieces, visiting from Sydney. We confirmed their names. Everything checked out." Catherine stared at him. "You checked documents?" "Passports, pictures on the walls, family albums," he said. "It all fits." Stallone looked at Catherine. She didn't speak. Not yet, but her face said everything. Later that evening, as the street lamps flickered to life along the town's main road, Catherine took her stack of flyers and a roll of tape and went walking again. She passed storefronts, lampposts, cafe windows, anywhere people might look. Each time she smoothed down a poster, she stared at the photo. Emma's missing tooth, Chloe's crooked bangs, and tried to believe she hadn't imagined the flicker of recognition in Stallone's voice. In the quiet park near the marina, a man sat alone on a bench with a canvas bag by his feet. He looked older, his beard streaked with salt and sun. He watched Catherine as she placed another flyer near the gate. "Those your girls?" he asked. She turned, cautious. "Yes." He nodded, slow. "Saw 2 like that, few months back, on a yacht, early morning, heading out toward the island. Funny thing, I never seen that boat come back." Catherine stepped closer. "You're sure?" "As sure as a man who lives on fish and tide charts can be," he said. "Name's James. I fished this coast for 40 years. She reached into her bag, pulled out another flyer, handed it to him. "If you remember anything else, anything at all." James took the paper gently. His eyes lingered on it. "Careful what you ask out here," he said quietly. "Some waters aren't meant to be stirred." The old fisherman's hut sat on a bluff just north of the harbor, framed by salt-warped wood and the scent of drying nets. James moved slowly, but with certainty, as he led Catherine through a narrow path behind the main road. The sun was dropping low, casting long shadows over the sea. Inside the small shack was sparse. A single cot, a rusted stove, a wall of lures and hooks. But James moved past all of it and motioned her toward a narrow ladder that led to the roof. "I've got a better view up here," he said, "and I think it's time you saw it with your own eyes." Catherine climbed carefully, her hands trembling as she pulled herself up. At the top, James handed her a pair of binoculars, old but heavy, well-maintained, clearly used often. "Straight out," he said, pointing toward the horizon. "You'll see a stretch of water to the west of Middle Island. That's where the big boats come in, but only when they think no one's watching." Catherine raised the binoculars, adjusted the focus. At first, nothing. Just the slow rhythm of the ocean and the faint outline of the island. Then, movement. A sleek, white yacht, its surface gleaming in the fading light, was cutting through the waves just offshore. And there, on the deck, two small figures stood by the railing. Her heart dropped. One of the girls had dark hair tucked behind her ears, Emma. The other was smaller, with a yellow headband Catherine herself had sewn the year before. Chloe. She didn't speak. She couldn't. The binoculars shook in her hands. James spoke softly. "You know those faces." Catherine lowered the binoculars, her breath catching in her throat. "Yes," she whispered. "That's them." James nodded slowly. "Told you the sea doesn't lie." Her fingers scrambled for her phone. She called Stallone first. He picked up before the second ring. "They're on a yacht," she said quickly. "I saw them. I swear it's them. Leaving Middle Island right now." "Where are you?" "James's place, the fisherman from the park. He's got a lookout. I saw them with binoculars." "Stay there. I'm on my way." It didn't take him long. Stallone arrived in a borrowed Jeep, gravel crunching under the tires as he stepped out, still wearing the same black t-shirt from earlier. He climbed to the roof without a word. Catherine handed him the binoculars and pointed. "There." He found the boat in seconds, watched for a long moment. Then he handed the binoculars back and pulled out his phone. Time to call Ben. Ben wasn't just a friend. He was a senior officer with the Queensland State Police, one of the few people Stallone trusted. They'd known each other for over 20 years, since a film shoot had brought Stallone into a crime prevention charity Ben had been running. Their bond had held ever since. Ben listened carefully, asked only 2 questions, then gave one reply. "I'll bring a team." Quietly. No local cooperation. Stallone ended the call and looked at Catherine. "We're going to do this our way." "What does that mean?" "It means a 2-pronged approach," he said. "Ben's coming in with his unit by road, undercover. No uniforms. Meanwhile, I'll get eyes on the water, drones, fly cams. If they dock, we catch them on land. If they turn back, we catch them at sea." James, still sitting on an upturned crate, tapped his boot against the floor. "You'll need to be quick. Those boats don't stay long. They drop off, they pick up, they vanish." Catherine nodded. Her voice was steady now, filled with the kind of resolve that only comes after grief has burned everything else away. "I'm not losing them again." James stood, walked toward a shelf and pulled out a small waterproof notebook. He tore out a page, scribbled something with a blunt pencil, then handed it to her. "If you ever need to find me again, this'll help. But there's something else you need to know." She looked up. "Don't trust anyone wearing a badge around here," he said. "Some of them protect more than just the law. Some of them protect money, power. And the man who owns that island? He's got plenty of both." The room fell quiet. Stallone nodded slowly. "Then we stay outside their reach." James watched them as they left. As Catherine climbed into the passenger seat, she clutched the note in her hand like it was a lifeline. The wind was rising now, the kind that always came just before a storm. The makeshift operations room was quiet, save for the hum of laptops and the steady voice of Ben as he laid out the plan. The small rental house on the edge of town had been transformed in less than 12 hours. Blinds drawn, maps taped to the walls, live drone feeds blinking across 3 screens. Ben stood with his sleeves rolled up, pointing at a satellite image of Middle Island and the stretch of shoreline just north of it. "They're moving the girls off the island," he said. "Stallone caught it on the drone this morning. Yacht to shore, black SUV waiting." Catherine stood at the table, arms crossed, eyes fixed on the footage. "They're not wasting time," she said. Ben nodded. "That's the pattern. Drop the girls into a fake family, fly them out under a new name. Once they're gone, they're gone." Stallone leaned in. "Rick Harrison is there. We caught a clear shot of him stepping off the yacht with the handlers. That confirms he's personally involved." Ben gestured to a separate monitor. "We also caught this." The video was grainy but clear enough. The SUV idled as 2 officers approached. One of the men, tall, bald, handed them a brown envelope. The officers glanced around, then stepped aside. No questioning, no radioing dispatch. Just a nod, and they drove off. Catherine's hands clenched at her sides. "They let them go. They helped them go," Stallone said. She stepped away, turned her back to the room. Her voice cracked, but didn't break. "They're supposed to protect children, protect families. They protect power," Ben said quietly. "That's what this is really about." On the wall behind him, a list of names was taped beside the map. Donors, business associates, political ties. Rick Harrison wasn't just a wealthy man with private property. He was part of something larger, deeper. He owned more than an island. He owned silence. Catherine turned back to the group. Her face was pale, but her eyes were steady. "So what do we do now?" Ben straightened. "We take them down." He outlined the plan. Ben's team, all from Queensland, all outside local control, would move in from the north, intercept the convoy if it tried to circle back toward the regional airstrip. A secondary force, coordinated through federal channels, would approach from the south along the inland roads, cutting off any escape. Stallone would remain in the sky, tracking the SUV via drone and flycam, giving constant updates on position and movement. "No locals involved," Ben said. "No warnings, no delays. If we move now, we've got a chance." Catherine stood still for a moment, then walked to the side of the room where her daughter's photos were pinned to a corkboard. The same ones she had printed and carried from town to town. Emma's gap-toothed grin, Chloe's shy eyes. "I want to be there," she said. "You can't be in the field," Ben replied. "It's too dangerous. I'll stay back. I won't interfere, but I need to be close. I need to see them come home." Ben hesitated, then nodded. "All right, you'll stay in the second vehicle with me, but once we move, no decisions outside the plan." Stallone came up beside her. "We're not losing them this time." Catherine looked at him, her voice quiet but unwavering. "I won't let my daughters lose another day to men like Rick Harrison." Outside, the wind was rising again. Stallone climbed into the small plane with the pilot team, while Ben and his officers loaded into unmarked SUVs. Catherine took the back seat of Ben's vehicle, folding her hands tightly in her lap. They drove in silence, the convoy splitting at the junction beyond the last gas station on the edge of town. Stallone's drone rose into the sky, tracking the black SUV as it turned down a side road through a grove of coastal pines. Ben adjusted his earpiece. "Stallone, visual? Target is moving steady, no sign of tail. They're not in a rush. That's good for us." From above, the trees looked like waves. The road like a line being drawn, one that led either to rescue or regret. Catherine watched it all from the screen in front of her. Her fingers tightened around the photo in her coat pocket. This was the moment. There would be no second chance. Night came without warning. The horizon faded from blue to black in a matter of minutes, and the coastal wind picked up, carrying the scent of salt and eucalyptus inland. Ben's team was already in position, vehicles parked behind a ridge overlooking the beach, headlights off, engines quiet. Stallone's drone circled high above, its camera fixed on the dark strip of sand below. From his vantage point in the command vehicle, Stallone gave the word. "They're coming in now. Vessel approaching from the south. Same yacht." Ben nodded, relaying orders to his men. "No one moves until I say. We wait for full disembark." Catherine sat in the back seat, eyes fixed on the small monitor showing the live drone feed. The boat had stopped just off the shoreline. A smaller dinghy was now ferrying passengers to land. Figures moved slowly. 2 men, one broad-shouldered, the other thinner, both in dark clothing. Then came the last, 2 small bodies carried in their arms. She leaned forward. "Zoom in," she whispered. The camera adjusted. There they were, Emma and Chloe. They weren't walking. Their heads lolled, arms limp, legs dangling as if they'd fallen asleep or been drugged. One had a stuffed bear clutched against her chest, held in place by gravity alone. Catherine's breath caught in her throat. "They've sedated them," she said. "They didn't even let them stay awake." Her voice cracked, but she didn't cry. Not yet. Stallone's voice came over the comm. "Rick Harrison is on shore. He's the last one off, moving toward the SUV now." Ben stepped out of the vehicle. "Let's go." The operation moved fast. From both sides of the beach, unmarked units converged like a net tightening around the sand. Footsteps hit gravel, the rustle of Kevlar and boots silent but swift. Stallone stayed in the air, his voice guiding every turn. "Targets in sight. They don't know yet. Keep moving." Then, a shout. One of Harrison's men turned, spotted the approach, reached for something under his coat. Before he could raise it, a sharp crack echoed. A warning shot, aimed low. The man dropped, grabbing his leg in agony. "Down! Hands up!" came the call. The others froze, stunned by the sudden appearance of armed officers on all sides. Rick Harrison stood motionless beside the open SUV door, hands at his sides. No panic, just annoyance, like someone late for a dinner party. Ben moved toward him. "Step away from the vehicle." Harrison didn't move. Instead, he smiled. The slow, oily smile of a man who had paid for too many secrets for too long. But it faded as Stallone stepped into the light, holding a tablet high. On the screen, video evidence. The bribe to the officers, the girls being dragged, the handover on the yacht. "This ends tonight," Stallone said. Harrison looked at Catherine then, finally. His gaze lingered for a moment before he spoke. "You think you're the only one who hurts?" he said, voice low and cold. "Everyone here has a price. You just didn't pay it." Catherine didn't respond. She didn't look away. Instead, she moved toward the stretcher where her daughters were being examined by medics. Emma's eyelids fluttered but didn't open. Chloe's fingers twitched. "They're breathing," one of the paramedics said. "Pulse is strong. We've got a chopper coming in 5. Catherine reached down, touched the top of Emma's head, then Chloe's hand. They were warm, real, still hers. That was when she broke. She didn't scream, didn't collapse. She just sank to her knees beside the stretcher and pressed her forehead gently to Chloe's shoulder, silent tears falling onto the fabric of the child's jacket. Her shoulders trembled, but she made no sound. Stallone was there in a moment, kneeling beside her, one arm around her back. He didn't say anything. He didn't have to. The whir of the helicopter began to rise behind them. Ben cuffed Harrison and walked him past the scene. Harrison didn't resist. His face was calm, unreadable. "You'll never make it stick," he muttered. "They'll say you overreached." Ben leaned close. "You trafficked children. You drugged them. You lied. And we have all of it." The central precinct of the federal police was a gray slab of concrete and glass, built for function, not comfort. Catherine sat beneath the humming ceiling lights in an interview room, a paper cup of water untouched in front of her. Across the table sat 2 agents from the Special Investigations Unit, one male, one female, both dressed in plain suits and tired eyes. She had been speaking for over 2 hours. No dramatics, no outbursts, just a clear, measured account of what had happened. "I went to every beach between Queensland and Perth," she said. "I slept in the back of my car. I used all my savings printing those flyers. I talked to people who wouldn't even look me in the eye." She paused. "But I didn't stop, because I knew they were alive." The agents nodded, quietly taking notes. They had already taken Stallone's statement, cross-referenced it with drone footage, and corroborated timelines with James, the fisherman who had first helped Catherine see the island from above. One of the agents leaned forward slightly. "What was it that convinced you the girls were being kept, not lost?" Catherine didn't blink. "Their faces. When I saw them on that yacht, they weren't wandering children. They were property." The silence that followed was heavy. In a room 2 floors down, the real work had begun. The suspects were being processed. Mugshots, fingerprints, stripped of the quiet power they had worn like expensive coats. A few cracked early, naming locations, logistics, small pieces of a much larger picture. Middle Island, it turned out, wasn't just a hideaway. It was a terminal, a halfway point where children were brought in under the guise of family vacations, bonded to new parents through rehearsed phrases, and moved offshore through private flights or hidden routes. Most never saw their countries again. 14 children had been confirmed to have passed through the island in the last 3 years. Only 6 could be identified by name. The rest, unclaimed, undocumented, and most likely lost in systems that would never admit they existed. In a sealed evidence room, Harrison's phone was being unpacked by a forensics team. Among the data recovered, falsified adoption papers, passport scans, and a collection of home videos. One video showed Emma sitting at a table inside the Middle Island estate. She looked dazed, eyes dull, voice quiet. A man, off-screen, prompted her, "What's my name?" She hesitated, then answered, "Daddy." Another video showed Chloe learning to write her new last name. Catherine watched both in silence. "They trained them to forget me," she said. The lead investigator placed a hand over the pause button. "This is evidence. Strong. But we'll need you to testify. In full." "I will," Catherine said. In the interrogation room, Rick Harrison said nothing. He sat with the same passive expression he'd worn on the beach. The only sign of agitation came when they showed him the video of Emma. Still, he refused to speak. "Not a word?" the agent asked him. Rick shrugged. Silence was his last defense, his last power. But silence wouldn't be enough. The investigators already had the paper trail, his offshore accounts, the shell charities, the photo ops with politicians who now denied ever meeting him. In the briefing that followed, the task force lead summarized it clearly. This wasn't a one-man operation. This was a marketplace, hidden in plain sight. Harrison was just the gatekeeper. When they returned to Catherine with the news about the other children, the videos, the names, she didn't ask for a moment to grieve. She simply nodded. "Then I'll keep talking," she said. "I'll say it all." She looked directly at the lead investigator. Not just for Emma, not just for Chloe, but for the ones who won't be coming home. Outside the building, rain began to fall, steady and cold. The story broke just after sunrise. By noon, it had spread across every major news outlet in the country. Headlines carried the same words, reshuffled in bold type. Private island, child trafficking ring, international operation uncovered. Rick Harrison's name was no longer a whisper behind corporate doors. It was broadcasted on every screen, his photo placed beside the word criminal instead of philanthropist. Outside the courthouse, a growing crowd of reporters waited behind barricades. Satellite trucks lined the street like metal beasts, their dishes turned skyward. Microphones pointed, cameras ready. But when Catherine stepped through the doors, she didn't flinch. Stallone walked beside her, dressed in the same dark jacket he had worn since the night of the raid. He didn't smile for the cameras. He didn't wave. He wasn't here to be recognized. A reporter shouted, "Mr. Stallone, is it true you helped lead the operation?" He paused for only a second. "I didn't lead anything," he said. "Catherine did. I just stayed close." Inside the press room, the tension was thick. Catherine was invited to speak first. She stood at the podium holding a folded sheet of paper, though she didn't look at it once. "My daughters, Emma and Chloe, were taken from me 8 months ago. For a long time, I was told they were lost, that I should grieve and move on. But I knew they weren't gone. I knew someone had taken them." Her voice remained steady. "And I wasn't the only mother who lost her children. I wasn't the only one told to stop looking. I speak today for them too." There were no tears, just the truth. The room was silent when she finished. Later that day, charges were formally filed. Rick Harrison and 12 of his closest associates were indicted for kidnapping, forgery, trafficking minors across international borders, and conspiracy to operate a global child smuggling network. The charges read like a ledger of depravity, each line colder than the last. Meanwhile, fallout swept through the local police department like a wildfire. The chief of police resigned within 48 hours. An internal investigation launched, revealing that nearly 1/3 of the local force had, at one point or another, accepted gifts from Harrison or his proxies. Some had turned a blind eye. Others had made sure files were buried. Uniforms were surrendered. Badges dropped into boxes. For the first time in years, the silence had broken. Catherine was asked to testify in court. It wasn't easy. She sat across from Harrison, who refused to meet her eyes. She answered every question with the same calm clarity she had held since the day her daughters were taken. She spoke of the pain, the fear, the refusal to give up, not to paint herself as a hero, but to explain the truth of what had happened. In the hallway afterward, reporters followed Stallone, eager for a quote. He shook his head. "I'm not giving interviews." "Why not?" one asked. "You were instrumental in—" "I'm not the story," he interrupted. "She is. But you helped bring down one of the most—" He stopped, turned back. "Listen," he said quietly. "I've played heroes on screen my whole life. But in real life, real heroes don't quit. Catherine didn't quit." And with that, he stepped into the elevator and was gone. When the court awarded Catherine full custody of her daughters, the ruling was unanimous and swift. No conditions, no questions. Her legal rights were restored in full. She held Emma and Chloe's hands as she stood on the courthouse steps. The girls, still recovering, clung to her sides as if afraid the wind might carry them off again. When asked if she had anything to say, she simply nodded. "We will never be silent in the face of evil again," she said, "because silence is how evil survives." The words weren't rehearsed. They weren't dramatic, but they stayed with everyone who heard them. Across the country, mothers and fathers watched the story unfold on their television screens. Some cried. Some turned the channel. But no one forgot the face of the woman who refused to let go. The hospital room was soft with light. Late morning sun filtered through the blinds, casting long golden lines across the floor. Machines hummed gently. Monitors blinked slow and steady. A nurse adjusted an IV drip, then stepped aside with a smile. "They're waking up," she whispered. Catherine stood at the edge of the bed, hands trembling, heart pounding harder than it had during any moment of the investigation, the chase, the courtroom. Nothing compared to this. Emma stirred first. Her eyes fluttered open, then focused slowly. She looked around, confused, her brow furrowed, until her gaze landed on Catherine. "Mama?" she said, voice dry. Catherine nodded, lips already quivering. "Yes, sweetheart. It's me." Then Chloe shifted, blinking, reaching out with a small, unsure hand. Catherine reached across the bed and took both of them into her arms, wrapping them so tightly they gasped. But they didn't pull away. They clung to her like lifelines. "You found us," Emma whispered, her voice breaking into sobs. "You really found us?" Catherine could barely speak. She kissed their foreheads, their hair, their hands. "I never stopped looking," she said. "Not for a single day." The girls cried with her. There was no need for explanation, no need for formality. Their bodies remembered, their hearts knew. Later that afternoon, as the girls rested, Catherine sat beside them, stroking Chloe's hair while Emma drank juice from a straw. Slowly the questions came, soft and unsure. "Were you scared?" Chloe asked. "Yes," Catherine said. "But I wasn't alone, and I never gave up." Emma looked down at her blanket. "He made us call him Daddy," she said quietly. "Rick, he said if we didn't, we wouldn't get to play or eat. He told us you were gone." Chloe added, "We weren't allowed outside, only in the house, and there were cameras everywhere." Catherine listened, every word cutting deeper than the last, not in shock, but in sorrow. The girls had survived something no child should have to understand, and yet, here they were. "You're safe now," she whispered. "That's all that matters. I'll never let anyone take you away again." There was a knock at the door. Stallone stepped in, quiet as ever, holding two small teddy bears, one brown, one gray, each with a ribbon tied around the neck. "Thought these might help," he said, kneeling beside the bed. The girls smiled shyly, taking the bears without hesitation. Chloe tucked hers under the blanket. Emma turned hers over in her hands before hugging it close. Stallone looked at them with warmth and gentleness, then turned to Catherine. "You got them back," he said. "That's everything." Catherine nodded. "You helped make that happen." He shrugged. "I've been lost before. It takes someone who won't give up on you to help you find your way back." When he left, the room felt quiet again, but no longer heavy, just peaceful. Days passed. The girls grew stronger, laughing more, sleeping deeper. The hospital stay ended with quiet goodbyes and warm handshakes. Catherine declined all media requests. She didn't want to relive it in headlines. She just wanted to go home. And so they did. The old house in Queensland had waited for them. Dust on the windows, weeds in the garden, but the sea still sang the same quiet song beyond the dunes. Catherine opened the front door slowly. Emma ran inside first, followed by Chloe, their footsteps echoing through the rooms like the return of something sacred. Later that evening, the three of them walked to the beach. No crowds, no noise, just the tide coming in, gentle and endless. They stood where it had all begun. Emma squeezed her mother's hand. Chloe leaned into her side. Catherine looked out over the water and whispered to the wind, "Family is where no one gets left behind, no matter how far they go, no matter how dark the night." The breeze carried her words into the sea, and the sun, low on the horizon, cast a warm golden light over them, as if the world itself had been holding its breath, waiting for this moment, waiting for the light to come back. And that was the story of a mother who refused to surrender to silence, who walked through grief, fear, and power to bring her daughters home. Catherine's journey wasn't just about survival, it was about light, fighting to bring it back where darkness had settled for far too long. If this story moved you, take a moment to like, subscribe, and share this with someone who needs to hear it. Until next time, take care of yourselves and take care of each other.